Kearney Live, presented by KMO-TV and 102.7 FM. Kearney Live takes a closer look at current issues and topics that matter to you. And now, here are the hosts of Kearney Live, Mike Davis, Jim Dickerson, and Stacey Bratcher.
And good afternoon and welcome to Kearney Live. Jim and Stacey are both out today, and in their stead, I am honored to have Jay Johnson and Josh Hurlbert with us this morning. Yes, this afternoon, I should say. Josh has been a regular guest for, I know you've been on this show at least 3 times.
It has been 3 times.
Oh, there you go. So good guess on my part. And Jay, you and I spoke less than 6 months ago, or
for the primaries.
Yeah, very much so. And tell the folks what you are running for and what you're doing.
I'm running for Clay County Commissioner, Eastern District, which is called Seat 2 on the ballot.
Very good. And when is Election Day?
2 weeks from yesterday, November 8th.
There it is, November 8th.
You want the minutes too?
I can well imagine. And Josh, you are here for what reason?
So I'm the current state representative for Kearney, District 12, but with redistricting, I'm running for state representative in District 8, which will be Smithville and then all the rural area around Kearney to the west, north, and east sides of town. So I'll be representing the Jesse James Farm and Tobacco Barn Farm and everywhere else around Kearney.
Very cool. Yeah, I know there was some discussion as to whether you were actually going to cover Kearney, and yes, but just not the downtown.
Correct, not city limits.
Right. Which is good, and we're glad to see you. Now, the last time you and I spoke, you were partially responsible, if not in large part, to get some voter, how do we want to say this, voter fraud sort of restrictions in the state of Missouri. You were able to pass some things. Could you just kind of briefly tell me some of the things that you were able to see your way clear to make sure that we have safe and fair elections in the state?
Yeah, after the passage this past spring of House Bill, I believe the number was 1848, but it gives Missourians the most secure ballots that we've ever had. It makes our elections, I think, the strongest in the country. We have it now institutes voter ID, which voters had approved back in 2016 by a 2-to-1 margin, but that the Supreme Court had taken out by a technicality. We were able to fix that technicality, so now you do have to show a voter ID in order to vote, or you then have to go through a provisional ballot if you don't have one that way.
Right. How many states, do you know right now, how many states have the photo ID requirement?
I couldn't tell you off the top of my head, but I mean, when the state of Missouri is willing to provide you a photo ID for free to make sure that you are who you say you are, I couldn't find a reason why not to vote for it. Right,
and I would wholeheartedly agree with that. And the reason I asked you that was because I wanted to get to a news piece that I think is pretty important. Now, the headline here says, "No excuse absentee voting is now available." Missouri voters are able to cast an absentee voting ballot without an excuse now, which sounds weird to me, that you need an excuse, but the word is funny to me. Now through November 7th. So the Clay County Board of Elections will accept absentee ballots at the Annex Building at 1901 Northeast 48th Street, Kansas City, or the Board of Elections office at 100 West Mississippi Street in Liberty. The idea behind it is a new election law gives Missouri voters 2 weeks before the election day to cast an in-person, no excuse, it's an in-person, no excuse absentee ballot. But the good news about it is you have to be you got to take it there in person.
Right, you have to do it there in person. You still have to show your ID to get the ballot. You still have to go through the entire process. That way you can just vote a little early without having to check the box saying you're out of town on business when you really just wanted to avoid the lines.
Yes, absolutely. So when I first looked at it, I thought, okay, well, one of the things I'll talk about this later. But I think one of the ways we can help make sure elections are secure is to vote in person, and I think this is helpful. The ID in and of itself, I think, makes a huge difference in this, but I think it also provides some convenience for lots of people. In fact, Jim is one of those people because he flies for a living, and he can be called out of town at any given time as a corporate pilot. In fact, he and his wife both are pilots. And for that reason, I think this is a great opportunity for folks to make sure you get your vote in, and you've got until November 7th to get this done, which I think is pretty cool. We're going to come back here in a minute. There's something else that I want to talk about right off the bat, and that is that despite their new financial situation and the fact that federal law now requires the Postal Service to deliver mail 6 days a week, with few exceptions, Congressman Sam Graves says he's still hearing from folks who aren't getting their mail delivered more than twice a week. Come back and we'll talk about it here on Kearney Live. Stay with us.
Simplify your banking, simplify your life. It's easy with Kearney Trust Company. Kearney Trust goes beyond convenient locations and good customer care to offer banking services that make managing your finances quicker and easier than ever before. Online, bill pay, e-statements, and mobile banking are available to give you a positive banking experience so you can get back to your life and activities. Kearney Trust also provides capital to people and businesses so they can achieve their goals. Whether you know exactly what you want or just need someone to talk to about your dream, you can speak with them and work on that dream. Kearney Trust Company is your partner for success with two convenient locations in Kearney at 310 West 92 Highway and 701 Watson Drive in Price Chopper. The phone is 816-628-6666. Kearney Trust Company. Banking you can trust. Member FDIC.
Electric cooperatives are different. We have a sense of pride in our local community and support the people who live here. That's why Black Clay Electric Cooperative supports local schools, takes an active role in economic development, and works hard to keep costs down for its members. We exist for one purpose, to empower communities and energize life with safe and reliable energy. To learn more about how Platte Clay Electric Cooperative is working to achieve that mission, visit www.pcec.coop. Platte Clay Electric Cooperative.
You may have noticed your shoulder hurting, or maybe a kink in your neck. The culprit may be looking right at you. Your phone. Think about how you use it. Does that pain feel familiar to you?
Hi, I'm Dr. Mark Strathman with Kearney Family Chiropractic Center, and I've been practicing chiropractic health in Kearney for over 22 years. When you come to see me, I identify what's wrong and determine if I can help you. If I can, I create your personalized plan for relief.
When you have pain, you can make an appointment by calling 816-628-6738, or you can visit the office at 301 South Platte Clay Way, Suite B in Kearney. Kearney Family Chiropractic Center. Heal yourself.
Welcome back to Kearney Live. We're glad you're here with us today. The United States Postal Service is one of the only agencies authorized by the Constitution. In fact, the agency can trace its roots back to 1775 when Ben Franklin was named the first Postmaster General. I wonder if any of you guys remember that from grade school. I do. So that's 247 years the men and women of the United States Postal Service. They've been delivering the mail, rain or shine. Remember that? Not rain or sleet or snow or hail or something. I remember that little thing. It doesn't matter where you live, downtown Kansas City, the suburbs, or rural North Missouri. They deliver the mail 6 days a week. At least that is the promise. Unfortunately, they don't always live up to that, especially not in recent years. The Postal Service has ignored or brushed off complaints from many Missourians to the extent that Congressman Sam Graves teamed up with Congressman Emanuel Cleaver to write the Postmaster General and demand some answers. In fact, for years, the Postal Service's justification for the failure was that they were losing money and had to cut costs. That's no longer the case. In fact, in April, Congress passed the Postal Service Reform Act, which lifted a huge financial burden off the agency. So that's right, that's a bailout, folks. And there's no other way to say it. And that's your money. As a result, the Postal Service posted a $60 billion, that's a B, net profit last quarter. So despite the new financial situation and the fact that federal law now requires them to deliver 6 days a week, and with few exceptions, Sam Graves is still hearing complaints, and there we are. And we were talking before we went on the air, and Jay, you're one of those people. Lives in a rural area, right. And you're finding that packages aren't being delivered on time.
Yeah, I think it was a week or so ago I read an article that Senator Josh Hawley was opening up some kind of investigation on the Postal Service around here, and I turned to my wife and I said, it's about time.
Yes.
So I'm not a big complainer, and I don't usually call companies up and talk to the supervisor and that kind of thing. I have I've tried to several times because our Postal Service has been so horrible where I live, and I can't even get a supervisor to answer the phone. It took me days to try and get a hold of someone, just leaving messages after message. But we weren't getting our mail. We'd skip several days for mail. Packages would say they were delivered when they weren't. They weren't delivered for like 2 days later. So somehow they're saying, they're checking the box that, hey, it's been delivered. When I call them up, this hasn't been delivered. 2, sometimes 3 days later, it gets delivered. And by the way, I love my mail carrier. There's a lady. I wish I knew her name. I'd give her a shout out. But she's great, super sweet, very nice. But the management of that post office that handles my area, I'll tell you what, I've been very disappointed.
Interesting you say that, and you point out it's the rank and file. The rank and file is not.
That's right.
At fault in a situation like this.
It's a management issue.
Yes,
Yeah.
it is, and I think in a general sense, in any business, you're going to find that if you're having problems at your cash register or by a wait staff or by anybody who's the key contact or the initial contact to the business, then it's on management.
That's right.
But nonetheless, we're still talking about a huge amount of money that was provided in this Postal Service Reform Act, Josh, and plus a $60 billion profit from really an agency that can't get the job done. I mean, let's talk about that.
Yeah, so what had happened back in 2006, Congress, in order to prevent an Enron-like failing of the postal retirement system and all the benefits that they get once they retire, start requiring the Postal Service to pre-fund those benefits for future retirees. Well, this act, eliminated that and just added postal workers to the Medicare system when they get to that age. And so because of that, it now has a $60 billion that it has saved up that it can now use to deliver the mail and more focus on those needed reforms. However, obviously, we're not getting the service that we as users of the system have been expecting, that have been promised for generations either. So we've had significant delays here in the Northland of the mail service and of our carrying. I know I've had multiple issues with the Smithville Post Office myself back home. So it's something that hasn't been getting better, and I'm glad to see that it's getting the congressional attention it deserves at this point.
The quid pro quo on a business transaction is I give you money and you give me either the product or the service that you promised. And for those of us who are in private business and have been around, or anybody, if you've been around a private business, and you know that you don't just get bailed out when you're not doing your job. And I think that's what I find most troubling about this. And again, in fact, my next door neighbor works for the post office, and I know for a fact he works his rear end off, and I mean lots and lots of hours. In fact, he and his wife both work there, and I see them coming in at all hours, including weekends. And so I'm not blaming them, and this is in no way, I just want to be clear about that. But in any case, I just think that the sort of, okay, you're a government agency, so you're good. It's all good. No, I don't think that's the case. It certainly isn't the case if FedEx was dropping the ball.
I agree, Mike. And one of the things I've always said is government needs to take a look at the private sector.
Yeah.
And get some tips from them on how they manage their businesses. And government can't run just like a private sector. We're different. We're not always for profit, that kind of thing. Your police department go to business day one if you're for profit. But we need to look at how they do things in the private sector and see what we can use in the government sector, in the public sector, because we're just not doing things right. And the old saying, oftentimes you give it to the government, they'll find a way to mess it up.
Right, and I guess the excuse that you can't hire people when it's clear to me that the $60 billion would have been easily spent on staffing up and at least I think some method of process, just looking into, okay, what's an easier way to do this? You think about process even in the way you handle a piece of paper on your desk. You talk about efficiencies, you talk about things that get the job done with less time and less effort.
Mm-hmm. Well, you've got rural post offices today that are open 4 hours or even in some cases only 2 hours a day. I mean, how can you expect to run a business and be able to provide that necessary service if you're only open 2 hours a day?
Right.
That's the kind of things that the Postal Service needs to take a look at. How can we better streamline our system to actually provide the needed services to our customers?
Well, I think that's exactly right, and I think that's the frustrating part that many of us have felt about the post office, and then we see them side by side in the same market share with companies like UPS and FedEx, and among others. But those are the big two, I think, that compete, and in fact, I think share some of the load of the massive delivery that we all use as online shoppers, and certainly, in fact, I think that's a pretty good contrast, Jay, because we were talking off the air about how, gosh, when I order something from Amazon, the little blue truck shows up right when they said it will, and generally that's 24 hours later or less at times, and you don't see that when it's a UPS delivered product.
In fact, with Amazon, I could sometimes track that little blue truck and say, okay, it's down the street, it's going to be in my house in the next 10 minutes or so.
Yes.
Back to my point, that's why I think the Postal Service needs to look at, hey, how are these companies working? How are they doing this and making a profit?
They have a process.
Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about. And somehow they're managing, and they just do it like it's unbelievable how I can't imagine a logistics company that can do what they do.
Oh, it's incredible.
And especially just with the numbers alone, which is fascinating to me. But I don't know. I just remember back when stamps were, 2 cents, 3 cents, I don't know. And you wonder how anybody made a living off of that. But I do. I will say this too, and I think this falls under management. There are times when I have had to find my way into my local post office, as you say, in Platte County, and I'm really not greeted with a friendly attitude. Now, I'm not asking anybody to just be all smiles and, bring out the music and the parades and throw the confetti. No, I'm just asking you to be polite. And I will stand in the line and I will not, there's no eye contact, no, how may I help you, or what can I do for you? None of that. And to me, that's a big part of this. And when you pile that on top of what we're looking at here that we've already spoken of, that this huge amount of money that is laying on the table now because, hey, guess what? You're profitable because we bailed you out. Well, we're the very people. Those of us who are standing in that line were the very people who just paid your salary. And that's what I find most frustrating with a government agency.
You'll find that in a lot of government agencies, by the way. I have.
Yes.
And to me, it's not just a management problem, it's a leadership problem. And the difference is with the leaders are the ones that establish the culture. There's a culture there. Like you said, we're not asking for a root beer to come out of the drinking fountains when we walk in there. We're just asking someone to be polite. Yeah. And there's a culture there. You go to a place like Disneyland, they have that culture. Hey, you're polite to our guests that come here. A lot of these government agencies, they just don't have that culture there, and that starts with the leadership saying, hey, this is what's acceptable and this is what's not acceptable. And when people come here, those are our clients. Those who pay your salary are coming here to visit today. Be nice to them.
Absolutely.
It's that simple.
No doubt about that. Let's keep that in mind as consumers, and I don't think it hurts to call them out. Josh, what's coming up next?
Yeah, so the National Center of Education Statistics released their biannual Nations Report Card for 4th and 8th graders on Monday. Find out how Missouri students fared coming up after the break.
you value choices when it comes to the products and services you bring into your home. That's why Platte Clay Electric Cooperative gives you control over the energy you use. PCEC offers members ways to save with energy efficiency rebates and demand billing. You even have the power to choose the resources used to produce your power. To learn more, visit www.pcec.coop/power. Platte Clay Electric Cooperative. Your power, your way.
Migraine headaches, the throbbing in your temples, the pounding in your forehead, extreme sensitivity to light and sound. Your neck feels so tight it could snap off. Oh, the debilitating pain.
Hi, I'm Dr. Mark Strathman with Kearney Family Chiropractic Center, and I've been practicing chiropractic health in Kearney for over 22 years. When you come to see me, I identify what's wrong and determine if I can help you. If I can, I create your personalized plan for relief.
When you have pain, you can make an appointment by calling 816-628-6738, or you can visit the office at 301 South Platte Clay Way, Suite B in Kearney. Kearney Family Chiropractic Center. Heal yourself.
Online banking at Kearney Trust Company gives you 24/7 access to your checking, savings, money markets, CDs, and loan accounts. You can access your accounts anytime from your home, office, and mobile devices. Online banking with Kearney Trust combines convenience and flexibility to bank on your own terms. Kearney Trust Company is a partner for success with 2 locations in Kearney at 310 West 92 Highway and 701 Watson Drive in Price Chopper. The phone is 816-628-6666. Kearney Trust Company. Banking you can trust. Member FDIC.
All right, on Monday, the National Center for Education Statistics released the first post-pandemic look at student achievement at nationsreportcard.gov. Missouri largely mirrored the national downward trend that showed the largest declines in learning since the government service started tracking these numbers in 1990. The percentage of 8th graders in the state at or above basic math levels dropped from 70% in 2019 to 61% this year. 4th graders declined from 80% to 72%. The percentage of 8th graders in Missouri at or above basic reading dropped from 74% in 2019 to 67% this year. 4th graders dropped from 64% to 60%.
Wow.
So if 40% of our 4th graders are not even at basic level for reading, what can be done to help our students? What do we need to do in our schools to help our students compete as adults in both the national business world and ever increasingly the international level?
So just so I'm clear, this is studies from since 1990, right?
Correct. So they started recording these statistics in 1990.
Okay, so we're not
lowest ever.
This isn't the gosh, how did we do during the pandemic sort of thing. And we already know for a fact that, you know, you may see similar numbers in drops, but this is disturbing. This is problematic. I mean, I'm sorry that I'm stating the obvious here, but yeah, I mean, it kind of makes you wonder, all right, just like we talked about before, where's the downfall? Where is this, what would cause this much of a drop over that long of a time? It's just, it's unfortunate.
Yeah.
And yet I see, you know, and I'll use Kearney as an example because I think it's one of the finest school districts around, and there's no doubt it's one of the top in the state. But I think Kearney does a terrific job. As I look at the kids that we're involved with in sports and some of the other organizations that, you know, as we're connected with the school district or some of the work that we do for them, they're high achievers. And they're kids that have, for example, we were told the football team had, you know, just I think their secondary, their defensive secondary had like a 3.8 GPA, which was incredible, and I think the overall team was somewhere in the nature of somewhere around 3 and 3.5. Now, okay, somebody's getting this right.
Right.
So who do we blame? That's what I want to know. Heads are going to roll.
Right. And I mean, obviously these test scores are statewide and nationwide that way. They're not, this is not Kearney specific data that way. This is, the entire state. But you're seeing it, in schools that were able to remain open for the most part in the 21-22 school year. The Catholic schools in particular, regardless of your income level, going to that school, they did not show these declines. I mean, if you actually separated out Catholic schools to the public schools, they would be the top-ranked state if you just took in Catholic students nationwide. So the fact that the students were able to stay in person longer and actually have that, not having the virtual, I think that was the biggest example we're seeing from here. I mean, it's not that there's not enough money in the system right now. I mean, good Lord, I saw the Washington Post had an article on Monday about how there's $122 billion of Biden bucks that was provided to these school districts last year, and only less than 15% of it has been spent. So there's money. The schools have money to be able to start addressing this problem, whether it's through tutoring or other items that way. But to acknowledge the gap that we've created with the as adults on the next generation through our pandemic reactions is concerning.
Now, do standardized tests enter into these numbers?
Correct. This was, I want to say there were about 1,800 Missouri students that they took test samples from to come up with these numbers.
Okay, so that would be we used to take the Iowa basic skills tests. Or is that
it's
kind of
comparable?
Yeah. Okay, so that brings up another point, and I think not every student is a good test taker.
Sure, absolutely.
And not every student wants to fill in little holes on a sheet with your number 2 pencil. And they may be using their iPads nowadays. I'm pretty sure they are. Just giving away my age here. But I remember not being excited one bit about having to take the Iowa and that was like a 2-day burdensome, horrible thing to have to do as a grade school student. Then, to take those basic tests and the standardized test. I don't know. That may have something to do.
Let me throw something else in the mix here, Mike and Josh. From a law enforcement perspective, I'm retired chief of police. When I became the police chief, one of the first people I went to was my librarian and my school teachers. I told them, hey, you guys are my biggest crime fighters, and this is why. I said, there was a study I read once that says children that don't know how to read, by the time they enter the 4th grade, have like a 70-75% chance of being on welfare and or incarcerated in their lifetime. Just by not being able to learn how to read by the time they hit the 4th grade. That's huge. That's huge. Now, my wife is actually an educator. She was a school teacher, her master's degree in elementary education. She taught in one of the largest school districts, Los Angeles Unified School District.
Wow. Yeah.
And we talk about throwing money. She was in a classroom, they just threw money towards her school. Throwing money at it doesn't fix it. It doesn't fix it. We did with our kids 3 different things. We homeschooled for a while. My wife homeschooled for a while. We sent them to private Christian schools for a while, and when we moved back here to Missouri, we sent them to public schools. So we've seen all 3 facets of it, the pros and cons of each, and I'll tell you, a lot of it has to do with just the culture in the home, the parental involvement, and being involved. That's first and foremost, I think, in my mind. But just throwing money at it doesn't fix it.
No, I think that's right. I think you nailed it with how a child is brought up and 2 parents in the home and all of the things that we all know are true.
Yeah.
Although there are success stories for otherwise.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
And I think there are success stories across the board that are showing up all over the place, and that is from homeschooled students. Yeah. And Josh, if I'm not mistaken, you were homeschooled.
I was homeschooled. We're currently homeschooling our 1st grader, Rose, as well this year. So our plan is to homeschool our next 2 kids when they get to that age as well. So, I mean, you're seeing some massive gains in the number of homeschoolers right now. You're seeing the number of homeschoolers nationwide has doubled since pre-pandemic levels, and that's across the board. Right now, it's about 10% of white or non-Hispanic students are homeschooling, and it's 16% of African-American students are homeschooling now, just because of the differences and wanting to get out of their situations that way that they felt trapped in. So my impression is that the more we can empower parents to have a choice on where their kids can go to school, to not feel trapped by their income or their zip code, that's the way to get more parent involvement, to actually give them some skin in the game, give them some choice in the matter, some school choice is what we really need to do in order to give those parents the feeling that they should be involved, that they have a say in their child's education.
Right. I think this is very similar to what we talked about in the first segment, and that is that we are all customers of the public school system, and if they aren't doing right by the quid pro quo, and that is our tax dollars paying for the public school system, people are going to find other ways to spend their time or their money. Now, the downside of all of that is, even as a homeschooler, you're still paying school taxes,
Absolutely.
right?
Absolutely.
And I think what people would like to do would be able to take that portion of their money and spend it either on private schools or homeschooling if their particular school district isn't getting the job done. Mm-hmm. And I think that's been an uphill battle, right, unfortunately.
And I mean,
school choice is what I'm
correct.
driving.
So
right.
I mean, 95% of students, the public school system works great for, and those students can thrive in. But you can't expect a school district to be all things for all kids and meet those kids where they're at educationally. So having school choice, we here in Missouri in 2021 we passed the Mo Scholars program to start a school choice program here in the state of Missouri. It is open to all Clay County residents right now that meet an income threshold, which is under $102,000 for a family of four, or if their kid has a IEP special needs learning plan, those kids can apply for a Mo Scholars scholarship and get $6,000 to attend the school of their choice.
So the money's there.
It's there.
And there's really, in my estimation, there's no excuse.
Right.
And I think it's unfortunate that because you're uneducated or you're undereducated, you decide that a life of crime is the solution. Is that a completely different problem to solve, or does it still involve education primarily?
Well, education ties into so many things. I mean, whether it's the career you end up with, the self-confidence, or sometimes it's just the social group you end up in. But education is huge. I will tell you though, there's an underlying theme we're seeing here. We saw it with the post office. We're seeing it with the schools. It's like the more government gets involved and starts running things, the more they mess things up. We got to fix that. There should be no excuse for that. I'm not saying we have to privatize everything. We got to get government to do the right thing.
I agree. What we ask for is smaller government. In other words, get out of our way.
Exactly.
Let us run these really agencies, and I'm sorry, that's really what schools are. I mean, at this point, it's a government agency. Let us do the work ourselves and keep government out of it. And I think that's a big start. Government is not going to solve your problem, and I think that's true for really anything. Oversized, overstaffed, overpowered, overfunding, centralized government is going to create nothing but problems, and in fact, we are living that right now with this current administration. All right, well, shall we move along, fellas? I think that was a good one. And Jay, what's coming up next?
Well, gentlemen, Prop A is on the ballot. That's the Clay County surtax reduction on commercial properties. Probably familiar with it, which will reduce services to police departments, fire departments, hospitals, schools, health departments, and cities throughout the county. Or is this simply a bureaucratic scare tactic to keep more tax dollars during this time of inflation?
I'm guessing it is.
We're going to talk about that, aren't we?
Right. Stay with us. We'll have more right here on Kearney Live.
You value choices when it comes to the products and services you bring into your home. That's why Platte Clay Electric Cooperative gives you control over the energy you use. PCEC offers members ways to save with energy efficiency rebates and demand billing. You even have the power to choose the resources used to produce your power. To learn more, visit www.pcec.coop/power. Flat Clay Electric Cooperative. Your power, your way.
Migraine headaches, the throbbing in your temples, the pounding in your forehead, extreme sensitivity to light and sound. Your neck feels so tight it could snap off. Oh, the debilitating pain.
Hi, I'm Dr. Mark Strathman with Kearney Family Chiropractic Center, and I've been practicing chiropractic health in Kearney for over 22 years. When you come to see me, I identify what's wrong and determine if I can help you. If I can, I create your personalized plan for relief.
When you have pain, you can make an appointment by calling 816-628-6738, or you can visit the office at 301 South Platte Clay Way, Suite B in Kearney. Kearney Family Chiropractic Center. Heal yourself.
Online banking at Kearney Trust Company gives you 24/7 access to your checking, savings, money markets, CDs, and loan accounts. You can access your accounts anytime from your home, office, and mobile devices. Online banking with Kearney Trust combines convenience and flexibility to bank on your own terms. Kearney Trust Company is a partner for success with 2 locations in Kearney at 310 West 92 Highway and 701 Watson Drive in Price Chopper. The phone is 816-628-6666. Kearney Trust Company. Banking you can trust. Member FDIC.
Gentlemen, Prop A will be on the ballot. This is allowing the 10% reduction in the commercial property surtax. Many government-funded agencies, as you know, such as the North Kansas City School District, have become very vocal in opposition, saying it will cut funding to much-needed services. What they won't tell you is that those tax revenues have increased by millions of dollars for the years their expenses continue to rise to meet their income. And that's one of the problems I'm seeing. In all probability, this modest reduction will not reduce services, but will still allow for increased revenue. Let me give you some numbers on that. Since 2018, the amount of money, the amount of revenue we bring in from the surtax, by the way, it's a surtax, which by definition is an additional tax that our commercial properties are paying, which is going to hurt small businesses. But the money that we brought in since 2018 has gone up by about 48%. That's more than 10% a year, which is more than a reduction. Last year alone, if we were to put this in effect last year we brought in, the county brought in $14 million on the surtax, which isn't a lot of money when you're talking $500 million is what we bring into property taxes. $14 million is what we brought in. If they were to complain last year that, hey, we're going to get a reduction, well, let's fast forward to this year when the reduction would have kicked in. This year we brought in $17 million. And if we were to reduce that 17 by 10%, that means that increase of $3 million from 14 to 17 million would have been reduced from $3 million to now you're only getting $1.3 million of an increase this year. Now, how is that going to cut services? How is the sky going to fall if you're only going to get an increase of $1.3 million?
Well, interesting that the example you use, that many government-funded agencies like North Kansas City School District were the first ones out there complaining. And what were we just talking about? And this, I don't think you two guys got together on this. Now, again, I'm a product of the North Kansas City School District, and they did fine by me. And I just think, you know, I get what they're saying. If your revenue stream is funded by a surtax, as you point out, which is in addition to our regular income taxes, then you had better be a good steward of the people's money, and especially if it's over and above what you had planned on having anyway. So
and when you have a surtax of the level that Clay County has right now, it is a deterrent to businesses looking to come to Clay County and set up shop. Either the county then has to negotiate a incentive package, which we all love picking winners and losers that way. But the loser is always your mom and pop small business that still has to pay that regardless. So this tax right now in Clay County is almost 5 times more than what they're paying in Platte County. The proposal to cut it back will put us on an even footing with Jackson County. How can we not want to be on even footing with Jackson County at least?
Right.
So to me, this is a no-brainer. It's a decrease to an increase in the assessment that these, especially given the way inflation is this year, all of our assessments are going way up this winter. So I can't see a reason why not to.
Isn't there a big tech center going in Platte County right now that's being built in Platte County right now?
So it is partial. It is about 2/3 in Platte County and 1/3 in Clay County.
Oh, interesting. Wow. How do you divide that up? Yeah.
It's going to be part in the Platte County School District and part in Smithville.
Okay.
Well,
go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt, but just so people understand, the reason why we continue to get more and more revenue from the surtax every year is because not only the valuations that you talked about, the value of the property is going up, but we're growing so fastly. New business, new commercial properties are coming to Clay County to the tune of, I think it was 30-something million worth just this year alone, according to Victor Hurlbert, our Clay County auditor.
He would know.
So that's more money coming in. And the problem we have is these agencies, their expenses just continue to rise with that money, with that income. And that is the problem. And to complain and say, hey, the sky's falling and your services are going to be cut. They even went on to say, hey, you know, this is going to fall on your individual property taxes are going to have to increase, which aren't. They actually were just lowered a couple weeks ago by Clay County. But this is just irresponsible, and I don't know if it's intentional or if it's ignorance. But to put this kind of information out, I just think is terrible. And this is another thing I think is wrong with government. You should not be able to do this. If you don't understand this, if you don't understand budgets like this, then you shouldn't be dealing with hundreds of millions of dollars of taxpayers' money.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, we just talked about it, and I think if your business property taxes are higher, and I think just as you pointed out, Josh, you're pushing away, you're scaring off new businesses that are potentially going to bring more revenue, more tax revenue, and guess what? More jobs right here in the county. So you want to keep this thing up high? Guess where they're going to go? They're going to go, what, two-thirds in Platte County and a third like the tech center,
exactly,
and a third in Clay County. I mean, that's a funny example, but probably the only example like that. But nonetheless, you can't scare off big companies that are looking at Kearney, Missouri, or Clay County in general to set up shop.
Right, and it just makes it that much more difficult for your local business, your locally owned folks, your mom and pop stores to expand when they know they've got 4 times as much of a tax on them as they do in Platte County. So it just makes it that much more difficult to build in Northland that's thriving ahead, that's pushing forward and growing like we should and we are. It just is an anchor on that development.
And to your point, Josh, just about every candidate who's running for at least the Clay County Commission, but probably just about every candidate everywhere, is going to tout that they're for small business. They're for small business. But what's the plan for small business? How do they get supporting small business? I'll tell you, the only way to support small business, there's 2 things I think that are important. Number 1, let them keep more of their profits.
Yeah.
If you're a small business owner, that's what you want. You want to keep more of your profits. And number 2, stop over-regulating us, which dips into our profits. And but you have candidates who actually are against this. And let's face it, this is not a huge reduction. It's 15 cents on every $100 valuation reduction. So every $10,000, you're going to save $150.
Right, but I can see how, for example, the North Kansas City School District would be complaining. Who else would this impact in the way that the North Kansas City School District seems to think?
Just about everybody gets a little piece of this. The city of Kearney, right here, they get about $237,000 from that. Yeah. And so let's say they did cut it by 10%. So Kearney would lose $23,000. That's if we cut it. It's an increase. It's a decrease in the increase is what we're looking at. Oh. Every year we're increasing our revenue that we're getting. So we're using this percentage thing and saying, it's a 10% reduction. I'll tell you what, here's an example. What would you rather have? 100% of my net worth or just 1% of Elon Musk's net worth? Yeah. Well, I mean, that's a 99% reduction if you go from 100% of mine to just 1% of his. But that 1% of his is over $2 billion. Yeah. I'd go with the 1%. Yeah, and so we're playing these numbers games. Well, a 10% reduction, you're not comparing it to the same amount we brought in this year. Just like last year, we brought in $14 million. This year, $17 million, which a 10% reduction would be a $1.7 million reduction on a $3 million increase. Mm-hmm.
So this is Proposition A, or they call it Proposition A,
Right.
and it's on the ballot on November 8th, right?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, so this is huge. So, listen, regular folks like me and Brian over there would really, how much would this impact either one of us? Would we notice it if we said, yeah, of course not, we don't need extra surtaxes over and above the sales tax?
You won't notice it at all.
There it is.
You won't notice it at
right
all.
there. And so I think in the interest of less government, smaller government, less government overreach, this is a no vote, right?
Yeah,
or is it a
yes
yes?
vote.
The
Yes,
way it's
yes,
written.
reduction.
yes.
So, okay, the
Should
way it's
they,
written.
should
yes.
they have reduced taxes? Yes.
Okay.
So, I mean, we just did something similar down in the State House. We had a special session where we have so much extra revenue because of the numbers coming in that way, increased sales tax, increased income taxes, that we have more money than we know what to do with. So we decided to cut income taxes by $1 billion and stair-step the rates down as we reach income, or as we reach revenue thresholds. So we're at the state level. We did what we could to start lowering those taxes to make government live within its own means. And I'm glad to see Clay County doing the same thing.
What other states actually cut taxes or give tax refunds besides Missouri? Maybe South Dakota. I don't know. I know that's a good
Which is great.
small government type state. But when I look at
Well,
the state-
particularly now in this time of inflation.
Yes.
I mean, there's only so much we can do at the county level, even so much you can do at the state level. But giving as much back as we can to the taxpayers to let
Yes.
them keep in their own pockets, I think
Yes.
that's what we need to do.
And it's not impossible to give tax money back. The state of Missouri has proven it, and I appreciate that, Josh. All right, we're going to come back with our final thoughts. Stay with us. We'll be right back on Kearney Live.
The Coach Minnick Show is on the air. Jim Dickerson and Mike Davis take you inside Kearney Bulldog football, the ways and hows of strategy, the honest assessment of skills, and the lessons learned. Go inside your favorite team every week on The Coach Minnick Show. Thursday mornings at 11:30 on KMO-TV and 102.7 FM, Kearney's hometown radio station.
And welcome back to Kearney Live. We're back with our final thoughts. We're going to go to Jay first for your final thoughts, sir.
Well, just a quick appeal to the voters. November 8th is coming up, less than 2 weeks away. And you have a decision to make when it comes to voting, and I just want to encourage everybody to get out there and vote first and foremost. But something you need to keep in mind, if you don't know anything about the commission, the Clay County Commission, just know this. Whoever you elect is going to manage about $500 million worth of your tax dollars over the next 4 years. The commissioners decide how to spend that money. You want to put someone in office who has some experience doing that. Obviously, I have 30 years in government. I have done that. A lot of people haven't even managed their own household budget, and they want to spend over $500 million of your tax dollars. Keep that in mind when you go to the polls on Tuesday, November 8th. I would plead for your vote so that we can get this, continue to move this train down the track in the right direction and use your tax dollars wisely.
Well said, Jay. Josh.
Yeah, so polling came out this morning that 67% of Missouri parents approve of school choice, that they want to be empowered, that they want to have more options on the table when it comes to meeting their kids' education. I support that. I want to see those choices. I want to see expansion of most scholars. I want to see expansion of parents having the power to choose what's the best educational fit for their kid. in having an education that meets their kid where they're at and then carries them forward into a thriving future. So I would appreciate your vote on November 8th as well. If you live in the 8th district, that would be all the outskirts around Kearney to the west, north, and east sides of town. So I don't get to represent Kearney proper anymore. I've been redistricted out of downtown, but I always enjoyed it, always look forward to being here and doing everything I can to help Kearney move forward.
Well, I can assure you we appreciate the work you've done in Jefferson City on behalf of Clay County, the folks in Clay County, and at one time all of Kearney. And it's nice to know that there are people like yourself who are representing the people, and we the people are in fact in charge of this country. I mentioned at the top of the hour, or I should say the top of the show, that we talked about the no excuse absentee voting, which is now available in the state of Missouri, which still requires a voter ID, and it still requires that you show up in person with your ballot. Having said all of that, I recommend that everybody who's out there vote in person if you can, and unless you are just completely unable and there are a number of reasons why you might be unable to vote in person. I believe the best way to ensure a fair and secure election is to vote in person. There's no doubt in my mind election fraud did take place in 2020, and if you don't believe that, go watch the movie 2,000 Mules, and I think that will open your eyes. And even if that was the only element, it doesn't even talk about the computerized vote counting or any of that. And if you're in denial, then I can't help you. I would just ask you to please take a look at this movie and know that if you vote before Election Day, you are giving election fraud, I would say, folks who don't have your best interest in mind. They can print up as many ballots as they want, fake ballots, which is exactly what that movie covers, is fake ballots being deposited before and after Election Day. And that is not a secure election, folks. And I think it's something we need to, even if we didn't do anything about it, and I want to see something done about it from when it happened in 2020. But I cannot encourage you enough to get out there and vote in person and be there on Election Day and just do the right thing. So I appreciate that. I appreciate you guys. I know we got a couple of minutes left, but we talk about smaller government, less government overreach, and I don't think that's a thing that. Let me put it this way: that is something every citizen, we the people, can benefit from. Less government, less overreach. And quickly, your thoughts.
Yeah, I think the best government is a smaller government, a government that knows to live within its bounds, a government that is restrained. I mean, that was the best part of passing $1 billion income tax cut, is it requires government to shrink. We passed a gas tax increase, funding for roads and bridges, but I think that's kind of what government should be focused on. You ask anyone what government should do, it's fix the dang roads.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
So having a government that we can focus on those necessities, those things that it should be doing, but not all the extraneous things, that a smaller government that isn't regulating businesses out of business, that isn't pushing people to make tough decisions in an inflation era, is better.
Yep, I would agree. Jay?
100% I agree with Josh. I mean, let's face it, every time government gets bigger, we mess up more things. I mean, that's just bottom line. We just, whether it's in the school districts, whether it's, and I agree with Josh. Let's get down to the basics. Government has some basic things that we need to do. Public safety, number one. We want a safe community, number one. Infrastructure needs. We have enough to deal with right there, just with public safety and infrastructure, to keep government busy. We add so many other things into the pot that I think is, and same with schools. Let's stay with your basics. Let's teach our kids how to read, how to write, how to do some math. We get away from the basics and what we should be doing as a government, and I think that's what gets us in trouble. We just get too big, and it doesn't work. We've proven that doesn't work.
Well said. And we've got an opportunity as citizens on November the 8th to make a big change. And I mean, every single one of us can benefit from this election, and I mean very quickly. And I think anybody that's paying attention has seen that there are things going on in this government right now that absolutely are illegal, and at the very least they're unconstitutional, which I guess kind of makes them illegal. In any case, I sure appreciate you both being here, Jay and Josh. Best of luck in the upcoming election, and thank you all for being with us today on this episode of Kearney Live. We'll see you next week.